Che stood before us in the Ministry of Labor auditorium. He was shorter than we expected, about 5 feet 10 inches tall. He wore an olive green military uniform, with a revolver at his hip. He embraced us with his intensity and joy. We were 84 American students visiting Cuba illegally in 1964. We had to travel 14,000 miles via Czechoslovakia to reach Cuba, 90 miles off the Florida coast. As Che rapped on for 4 hours, we fantasized taking up rifles, growing beards, going into the hills as guerrillas, joining Che to create revolutions throughout Latin America. None of us looked forward to returning home to the political bullshit in the United States. Then Che jolted us out of our dream of the Sierra Madre. He said to us, "You North Americans are very lucky. You live in the middle of the beast. You are fighting the most important fight of all, in the center of the battle. If I had my wish, I would go back with you to North America to fight there. I envy you." It began with a 14-word edict issued by a Berkeley campus dean outlining political tables and leafletting for the purpose of organizing demonstrations off the campus. We were amazed. Surely it must be a problem of communication. But every dean we talked to said, "I can't do anything about it. I'm not responsible, but you'll have to obey the rules." And the president of the university, Clark Kerr, no one even knew what he looked like. Then we learned the inside story. The previous year, we used the campus to organize massive civil rights demonstrations against the hotel and auto industries in San Francisco. The very same racist who controlled the business world controlled the university too. And they were trying to protect their businesses by attacking us at our base, the university. They were the regents. The regents were at their country clubs, and they would rather shit on a student than talk to him. We put up civil rights tables in the middle of the campus. We decided to deliberately break the new rules. A police car pulled into Sproul Plaza. Cops were leading one arrested activist into the car when somebody shouted, "Sit down!" Within seconds, the car was surrounded by a few hundred people. Within minutes, our numbers grew to 2,000. Inside the police car was Jack Weinberg, a prisoner of the pigs. But we surrounded the pigs, and they were our prisoners. We demanded his release in exchange for their release. The cops would have to drive the car over our bodies to take our brother to jail. We climbed on top of the police car to rap about what was going on. For the next 10 hours into the night, 5,000 people packed into the Berkeley campus square for the greatest class we ever attended. As we surrounded the car, we became conscious that we were a new community with the power and love to confront the old institutions. Our strength was our willingness to die together, our unity. We created our own spontaneous government. People formed communes to make sandwiches for those surrounding the car. Committees notified the media and contacted students across the country, and we created a negotiation team in case the university was interested. 32 hours later, we heard the grim roar of approaching Oakland motorcycle cops behind us. I took a deep breath. Well, this is as good a place to die as any. But as we prepared to meet the heavy club of the man, the university suddenly dropped charges against our arrested brother and agreed to negotiate. The deans found themselves up against the wall for the first time in America. They didn't dig it. 2 months later, we learned a heavy bureaucratic trick. The fucking deans were using negotiations as a dodge to wear us out. Talk, 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 while the rules against political activities stood strong. We got very pissed off. Fuck this shit. So one beautiful sunny noon, Joan Baez sang, Mario Savio orated, and 1,000 people walked into the administration building to shut the motherfucker down. At 4 a.m., the governor, a liberal Democrat, ordered the Oakland cops to clear the building. 800 persons were arrested, the biggest single bust in American history. The sight of cops on campus threw all the fence-sitters, including the professors, right into the arms of the extremist. Students retaliated with a strike that crippled the university. We destroyed the university's moral authority. The only authority left on campus was the free speech movement. The regents and deans had no power. Students could do anything we wanted. Students became the biggest political force in the state, with the university as our guerrilla stronghold. We held power on campus because we were the majority there. But off campus, the politicians, courts, and cops were hollowing for our balls. The free speech movement invited young kids to come to Berkeley for the action. So thousands of refugees from New York and the Midwest flocked to live on the streets of Berkeley. It was an easy life. The weather was warm and the seasons hardly changed, so you didn't need to buy winter clothing. You could always get by selling dope, or you could hawk the bob on the weekend to make enough money for the rest of the week. There were always guilty professors to panhandle, and some people started handicraft industries, sold jewelry, candles, and other things they made right on the avenue. Nobody starved in the streets of Berkeley. A whole new culture birthed forth just outside the biggest university in the history of the world. Telegraph Avenue was 5 blocks long, lined with bookstores, outdoor cafes, poster shops, and underground movie theaters. Dig the straight student who came out of a Los Angeles suburb to get an education at Berkeley. Heading for his dormitory or apartment after a hard day at school, he passed down Telegraph Avenue, like walking through the Revolution on the way home. He would pass a record shop and catch a couple lines of Dylan, a middle-class suburban kid just like himself, except looking like a barefoot Jesus Christ, would walk up and ask him, "Any spare change?" Gradually, the thought entered the consciousness of the straight student. Here I am, burdened by assignments, responsibilities, guilt, no time my own. And here are these hippies on the street. They can do whatever they want to. They can get high all day. They can stay in the sun all day while I have to spend my time in a stuffy classroom, listening to boring professors and taking exams that are making me a nervous wreck. The university is a place for making it, a high-pressured rat race. Competition for grades, degrees, books, recommendations, getting into graduate school and getting a good job. The academic world is a hierarchy, and everybody's always kissing the ass of the guy on top of him. But all the students saw the living example of thousands of young kids who had given up on the straight world and who were free, even though they hadn't reached retirement age. They were real students in the classical sense of education and self-growth. And since many of the hippies were ex-students, they had the zealous mission of reformed sinners. Students started hanging around non-student tables and forgetting to go to their classes. As their hair lengthened, their interest in schoolwork shortened. As they smoked more and more dope, they found their exams and research papers more and more absurd. They started dropping out of school in droves. The wildest teacher at the University of California was Stu Albert. Stu sat behind the table of the Vietnam Day Committee and attracted massive crowds because he was the first revolutionary anyone ever saw with flowing blonde hair and devilish blue eyes. But as soon as they looked, they got hooked by Stu into ferocious controversy about pot, Vietnam, God, the university, sex, and communism. It must have outraged the university professors. They had to force people to attend their classes through threats, rewards, and punishments. But here was Stu, holding everyone's attention just because they dug rapping freely. Stu was teaching under the sun instead of in a stale classroom, but he had no right to teach. He hadn't gone through the credentials factory like everyone else. He was a dropout. The university became a fortress surrounded by our foreign culture. Long-haired, dope-smoking, barefooted freaks who were using state-owned university property as a playground. It threatened the integrity of the university. It freaked out the politicians of the state. The politicians considered us traitors, and we were traitors using tax money to carry out our treason. The conservative forces in the state pressured the university to clean up the foreign scum. The university readily agreed, because it discovered the vermin corrupting from within as well as without. The university began Operation Pacification. Separate the people from the guerrillas. In Vietnam, the United States uproots the peasants from their homes and locks them into specially created strategic hamlets surrounded by barbed wire to keep out the Viet Cong. The university administration decided to turn the entire university into one big strategic hamlet. They created the category non-student. By putting a non in front of the people hanging around Telegraph Avenue, they excluded us from the human race. It was like Germany inventing the term non-Aryan. Anything bad that happened in Berkeley now could be blamed on the non-student. And of course, we, the non-students, dug the name. It was just what we'd been trying to say all along. We've given up on degrees, careers, and all the external symbols of the American society. We are proud to be known by what we are not. To drive free spirits like Socrates Stu from the campus, the university administration issued an order making it illegal for non-students to sit at tables on campus without students beside them. The university outlawed non-students leafleting on campus and said any organization with non-student members could not use university facilities. The California state legislature passed the Mulford Act. A non-student who does not leave the campus when ordered to by a university official can be arrested for trespassing. To carry out all this pacification, the university mobilized a plain-clothed cop with the full-time job of walking around the campus in search of non-students, spying on politically active students, looking for rule violations, compiling dossiers, and working closely with the Red Squad, FBI, and CIA. Stu spotted him and yelled out, "Hey there, Dean Fuzz." The name stuck. The goal was to castrate students. If students became politically active, they were kicked out of school and turned into non-students. Mario Savo the archetypal student leader became a non-student. A student was defined as somebody with an enrollment card, not somebody interested in learning. It was totalitarian state, doublethink. But you had to feel some sympathy for the president of the university, Clark Kerr. He was so proud of his statistics and blueprints, the millions he panhandled from the federal government and from big businessmen, the number of Nobel Prize winners at his university, the scores of buildings to be built, weapons discovered, new departments, the football team. But whenever Kerr traveled in the country, nobody asked him about his Nobel Prize winners or expansion programs. What about those student demonstrators on campus? They asked over and over again. Poor Kerr, we stole his university right out from under his nose.